Hello and welcome to the Oregon Business Matters podcast, brought to you by Oregon Business and Industry, your statewide Chamber of Commerce. At Oregon Business Matters, we focus on insights, issues, and initiatives that impact Oregonians' shared prosperity and the state's economic health. I'm Angela Wilhelms, President and CEO of OBI, and your host here at Oregon Business Matters. And today I'm really excited. I'm sitting here at the beautiful Portland City Hall talking, about Portland, Oregon's largest city, which generates significant and, in fact, a disproportionate share of Oregon's jobs, tax revenue, and, of course, sometimes headlines across the country. In recent years, it's also struggled disproportionately from problems encountered by businesses and individuals across the state. You know, these are the effects of homelessness, unsanctioned camping, rising taxes, stagnating employment. But today's conversation is an opportunity not just to talk about some of those challenges from a business community perspective, but also to talk about the opportunities and the bright spots here in the city. So joining me today, and thank you both so much, joining me today are Portland Mayor Keith Wilson, now 1 full year into his job, and Andrew Hoan, President and CEO of the Portland Metro Chamber, which is a tremendous partner organization to OBI. Thank you both for talking with me today.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Well, let's dive in, and let's begin with you, Mayor Wilson. So as I mentioned, you've been in office just about 1 year now, and I mean, generally speaking, open-ended question, how has it gone? Where have you and the city made progress? And while you do that, can you tell us a little bit about the Central City Roundtable and some of the work that remains before you?
You bet. Well, when I was campaigning and talking to the city, I can tell you right now, I never expected the year we just had. So how's it going? A host of different things that I did not anticipate. The federal uncertainty, certainly President Trump's election has really added a tremendous amount of chaos to the city and the things we have to deal with, the tariffs, interest rates, a whole lot of things that are controllable and or not controllable. And then we also have, reputational damage in the community that we have to address. And that's kind of our national narrative. But I had a conversation with the city, and I really talked to them about 3 key goals that we had to achieve in successive order. And that was really address the humanitarian crisis straight on, that we cannot have people suffering and dying on our streets, and be a dignified, decent city. The second part of that is we had to reduce the burden on our public safety system. We simply had to have officers, when called, be able to show up. We needed to restore that trust, that promise in the city that's safe as well. And then you talked about the third was revitalizing our economy, and that really goes into the Central City Roundtable, and that's the next iteration right now. If I were to try and tackle that, the federal government has created a tremendous headwind. It's something that seems to rear its head every few weeks, where it feels like an existential threat. Recently was the fatality in Minnesota that really galvanized our city in frustration, grief, anger. And then the next day after that, we had 2 people shot for whatever reason. Certainly, a criminal stop shouldn't relate to a shooting, right? So there's alarm. We have a city that is really on edge right now. I feel like we are just on edge, and that it's combustible. Now we're dealing with that while we're trying to revitalize our city.
Right.
We're in the midst of a renaissance, and we're having success. Those 3 things that I talked to you about, the humanitarian crisis, we are having a tremendous amount of success at rapidly opening up shelter, and then our outreach workers are having success with activating those shelters with people coming in. Our offices are helping, provide that service to those individuals. And then we're seeing the pressure on our officers starting to reduce. They're starting to help those individuals on the street. And so we're not seeing a reduction in the response times, unfortunately, and that's primarily because of our efforts with dealing with the federal chaos. We're having an awful lot of manpower we're having to spend at the ICE facility that isn't helping us move our city forward. But we are seeing the revitalization in the city that we all wanted and we all expected. Now, the Central City Roundtable is going to be that next iteration. The governor, as well as the Portland Metro Chamber, as well as the previous mayor, really focused on what can we do to revitalize our urban core. Without a revitalized, vibrant urban core, we're just a city. We're not a community. And so I recognize that importance. So I've taken that baton from Andrew and the governor, They recommended the Central City Roundtable from the Central City Task Force, and we're going to run it. We're not going to create something new. We're not going to create a new grand plan. We've got a lot of people who've done work over the year. And so we're going to focus on those 3 key goals that they've asked us to deliver. And we're going to all in. Nolan Leinart is now going to be my co-chair. We are just making the invitations of about 15 regional and local leaders. And that roundtable is going to be empowered to really begin the hard and important work of turning our city around from the downtown core out. And you're going to see this renaissance really just take off.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we'll dive into a couple of those topics that you mentioned a little more specifically here in a minute. But Andrew, I'd love to hear from you. As you know, OBI focuses primarily on state policy, but our members care deeply about the health of Oregon's largest city. Many of them are here, but even those outside of the city of Portland care deeply about the city and the region's health because it impacts their health as well. So let's talk a little bit about, what, from your perspective, are the 2 or 3 most significant factors, affecting the business climate and business community here overall. And, are things improving? And let's just start there, and then we'll get into some of the specifics. Yeah.
Well, first, to everyone that's listening, we're the chamber here in Portland and the statewide business community have never, in my experience here, as brief as it has been for 7.5 years, have never been better aligned and working together in an effective way. And so folks that are members of OBI, thank you. We really fly in the wake, or I guess sail in the wake. I don't know. What do you do in a wake? We're in a wake somewhere. But either way, we're big fans of what OBI does, and we need a healthy statewide business community because some of the policies that we work on together with the mayor and our members really require that activation on state fronts. So big fan here. And then into your question about where we are, I think that the arrows are just mixed. And I'll get to why I'm answering that way. But I do want to acknowledge and get to a sense that the business community has, which is increasing confidence. And why is that confidence increasing? Because at both the state and local level, we are seeing results of policy and the execution of plans. Good example, Measure 110, probably well-intended. Massive and negative consequences on our streets. Don't need a PhD to recognize that. I drive in and work downtown every single day. We're raising our 3 children here. We're going to Portland Public Schools. Our family's all in on Portland. And what happened after Measure 110 was a true catastrophe from a human perspective. And guess what? The state pivoted, changed the rules, made some common sense reforms, and lo and behold, the noticeable difference is clear, but then the human difference is even better. So thank you to the state for pivoting. Secondly, going back to that confidence comment, that's what businesses want to see. Great idea, execute it. Then we have a mayor who is a business leader coming into office and sets a very, simple would be maybe construed as negative, but it needed to be simple. A simple message. We're going to get shelters open, going to get people off the streets into shelters so they can get services and on their way to permanent supportive housing. And it was like pouring honey down businesses' ear. It was one of those moments of clarity where you have an elected official that said, I've got a game plan. It's going to be time certain when it's going to be completed. You can hold me to account if it's not. And what happened? He delivered on his promises. That's a confidence building exercise. So those are good steps forward. Now, in a broader sense, business should never be talking about substance abuse, drugs, alcohol, chemical, or unsheltered homelessness. That's not an arena that business even wants to remotely be involved in. In fact, I don't think I used those words in the years that I was leading Brooklyn's largest, or the state of New York's largest business association. They are not arenas we want to be in. Those are things that should just happen. So the clarity of approach that the mayor's bringing to this city around do one thing really, really well and execute on a game plan in a time certain manner, that's what we want to see happen. Now comes the next steps. And your question about how are things going? I think all of us feel better because the city feels better. People should come here and check it out with their own eyes. Right. So that's the first thing that should happen. But how is the business climate? It's not great. And I just refer people to what the county economist said most recently. We are in a donut effect. We're learning all sorts of new economic terms these days. I'd never heard of that before. But there's a reason why the county's own economist had said we are in the middle of a regional economy, and the center of it is sick. And he's right. The same thing when we released information about what does it look like to be in a doom loop, which I know people don't like talking about, but there's a reason, because the economic conditions are extraordinarily challenging. So any business would not want to sugarcoat the answer. It's rough right now, but these confidence building steps are what is changing the dynamic, I think, in our community. And now we get to talk about the stuff we need to be talking about. When you have a governor and a mayor both leaning in heavily on economics, that's where we want to be. And so I would say, if you're asking me which direction we're going, it is positive and it's trending up, because finally we have a culture that is embracing business and saying, what do you need? May not be able to boil these oceans overnight, but we're going to get to the root core of the problem, and then we're going to come up with solutions. I have confidence, especially in this mayor, who's, when he says something, he does it. And that is a big shift in the culture of our city and community.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've noticed too, and definitely since, and I think you've hit on it in an interesting way, is all too often in this city and in this state, in policy debates, most in the past, but not absent from the
you
present.
You can say it out loud.
But also in the present is this assumption that business is another thing. And when in fact businesses are made up of the people who own them, run them, lead them, work in them, make them tick, make them go, make them drive the economy. And in fact, those people are the community. You used that word earlier, Mayor. And so I think having someone in your role who understands that and knows what it's like to have to sign the front of a paycheck, and support families through that, you can feel the difference when you have leaders who understand that businesses are people who are part of the community, and that that matters. Well, I want to hit on something you both brought up, and I do want to give a huge amount of kudos to you for setting a goal, reaching the goal. And that goal was right out the gate, you said you would add 1,500 overnight beds as part of your strategy to end unsheltered homelessness. And I think a lot of people wondered if that was too lofty, but you did it. And you deserve congratulations for that. The Oregonian editorial said that Wilson's success in fulfilling his promise provides Portlanders a badly needed boost and hope that the city is finally on an upswing. And I think, Andrew, that's what you were getting at, is seeing that forward progress. So now that you reached that goal, you then are starting to take that next step, which is around the enforcement of the ban on unsanctioned camping.
That's right.
Early days, but how is that going?
So first of all, the goal was simplistic because we needed to have a clear objective that was unrealistic, but we had to work relentless to get it. We had an end date by December 1st because the winter was coming up, and the team needed it. And I brought all 26 bureaus and programs and said, we have one crisis in the city. We're all going to deliver it. And that's the beauty of this new mayor, is as an executive mayor, I control the entire city apparatus, as opposed to 5 commissioners or 5 mini mayors. And we achieved it. Super happy about that. To Andrew's point, though, Measure 110, well-intentioned, but we signed that bill and we implemented almost immediately without having a plan put together on that. Completely different for what we did. We have a 6-point plan. First was we aren't going to hand out any more tents. The year prior to me taking office, we handed out 6,400 tents and 23,000 tarps. You cannot foster the behavior you're trying to end. County agreed, and they stopped doing that in April of last year. Second point was reunification. We wanted to reconnect people on the street that were lost or being held hostage with their families around the country. We're up to 235 souls to 44 different states.
Wow.
Take the pressure off of your city, that reunification, and it is going bonkers right now. We're getting about 14 people reunified every week. The third point of that plan is we had to rapidly ramp up shelter, and we've done it. We have about 200 to 250 empty beds every night, which we have to have empty beds. We never want to have a system that's at capacity because our system can't work then. The trust is lost in the city. The fourth is guidelines. We had shelters where people were staying in them for years, and we started adding stay limits. When we notified a gentleman last week that, I'm sorry, you've reached your stay limit, you're not engaging, you're not trying to move forward, he said, well, I'll go live with my brother. And we're like, that's good. He had been in the shelter for over 2 years. So that's guidelines. That's just common compassion, but with accountability. The fifth is community standards. That's the point you said regarding how are we going with enforcing our laws on unsanctioned camping. It's going well. We flipped the script. Our officers were standing back and acting as security guards when we did a camp sweep, because that's all it was. We were just moving these people from one neighborhood to the other. We're not doing that anymore. We lead with the officers. They go and they immediately either cite for a infraction, but we immediately check and see if there's warrants. And the first week of the 100 campers that we contacted, 40 had warrants. We haven't been checking for warrants in 4 or 5 years. We've had so many people, bad actors, hiding in plain sight that weren't going into the system to resolve what was keeping them on the street. And in some cases, you had bad actors that were preying upon our community and often the houses, so, folks. That's ending. And so the good part is when those 100 souls were contacted, 40 of them came into shelter. We've never had a week where so many people came into shelter because they didn't have an option at that point. It was being removed. You didn't have to move to the next block. It's time to come in. But if you have a warrant, warrants in Portland are no longer meaningless and court dates are no longer optional. That's because we trust the justice system and we're here to help. And then now the 6th point is housing. We have got to rapidly open up the vacancies because we don't want to be a shelter community. So it's all going well. The enforcement is only one part of that 6-point plan, and all 6 points are either almost, several are completed, some are partially completed, but we're working on that 6th point with this housing right now with as much effort as we did in the first year. So it's going really well.
That's great. Well, again, congratulations and
Thank you.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Andrew, just with you really quickly, is there anything you want to add to this particular topic before we switch to a different policy area?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to that original commentary around confidence. And I think if you look at Oregon, sort of Washington, California, Hawaii, number 1, 2, 3, depending on your point of view, in the nation, traditionally in the HUD point-in-time count proportionate share of unsheltered homeless individuals. So we've always been leading in how many people are on our streets. And how this impacts all of us is it goes back to evaluating our community from the perspective of whether or not we have it together enough to take care of the most vulnerable. And I'll never forget the day that I was informed by our affiliates, Downtown Portland Clean and Safe, that they had helped to deliver a baby on the streets of Portland. This is prior to Mayor Wilson being in the administration. And I think about that as a broken compact with civic society. That's the problem. And we failed to address it for so long that I think this sort of radical departure from accepting that status quo has been what has enlivened the discussion around homelessness. But to business, it's been heartening because when we bring our customers, concert goers, entertainment, the fun, the beauty, and the vibrancy of this city together, what they're seeing is a renewed compact with civic society saying we will no longer accept those conditions we previously saw on our streets. And so to me, that's the impact is we're sending that we don't take this lightly anymore. It's not a joke and it's not a political talking point. People shouldn't die on our streets. Babies shouldn't be delivered on our streets. Let's move past that quickly so that we can get to the more important issues. So again, going back to one thing I want to just point out from a statistical point, Downtown Portland Clean and Safe has been tracking the number of tents that are in the core, our 213 blocks, now 273 blocks of downtown Portland. When we started doing this, and it is a standard practice of our teams, 2 years ago we were in the 400 to 500 tents on the street. Now, at the last count, we're somewhere between 30 and 50. Right. That kind of progress, yes, it's visible. Yes, it's good for business, but it's so important for our city. It cannot be understated. That value is beyond comprehension because those are people that are now getting help, they're getting safe, and they're moving on to the next generation, the next best part of their life, we hope.
That's pretty amazing, 70% reduction. Yep. And so, Andrew, I also want to just give him a shout out. We're going to be going out at 1 a.m. today to do a walk in Old Town because we want to find out if there are people on the street, as our mothers used to say, nothing good happens after midnight. And we have noticed that there are people out there at night. We want to know why And then I'll be taking out a contingent of officers with me, and then we'll come up with a program as to what's going on. Is it drug dealing? Is it drug use? Is it human trafficking? We want to go and see, and then we will work with PPB, which is our police department, and we'll find out what sort of resources we can provide for those individuals. But if there's any criminal activity, we need to find it and support the community by providing the resources they need. So again, it goes back to care for your most vulnerable, and you're caring for the city writ large, and that's really what we're doing.
Yeah, and I want to applaud you also for a theme that's emerging in this topic is that you're not afraid of the reality of the data, and you're not afraid to acknowledge when something isn't going right. In fact, that's leadership, is to stand up and say, this isn't good. The facts are the facts. We have a problem and we need to fix it. And the fix is not only a collection of things we need to do proactively. Sometimes a component of the fix is undoing something or doing something differently than it has been done. And I think all too often, and we see this probably more acutely at the state level, to be perfectly candid with you, that there is a fear of undoing or changing, because that somehow implies weakness or an admission of having gotten it wrong, when in fact, that's leadership.
Yeah.
Assessing the situation based on the facts and then pivoting and or changing course or frankly just stopping.
Yeah.
So,
but doing nothing is not a course of action. And I fear that when I took over the job, everybody was hoping it was going to change. It's going to get better next year. And I kept telling people, hope is not a course of action. What's your plan? What are your outcomes? And, you know, the good thing, and I'll riff off of that for a second, is everything I put forward, I was very clear with. We did the research, we looked at the data, but we moved forward. And we received attack after attack after attack. But I think people are starting to get confident, like, okay, he can take the pressure. We're going to move forward. We're going to try it. We'll adjust. And everybody's starting to see, okay, we know what we're doing, or if we don't know, we're fixing it as we go along. And I think there's a confidence in the city now, to what Andrew was saying, that no, it's not all perfect, but we see the direction and we see profound decisions being made, sticking to those decisions, carrying through, and then locking in your win and moving forward. I think the city's I've been really heartened this last 6 months. We took a tremendous amount of withering hits this first 6 or 7 months, but I think we've reached a certain point where people are beginning to trust good government, and that's really important.
It is, and you're never going to make everybody happy. Nope. So I think accepting that as well and moving forward when you know you need to is great. I want to, okay, look, this is going to be predictable, so we don't need to spend a ton of time on this topic, but I would probably get fired if I didn't raise the question. So I do want to talk a little bit about the city's tax burden, another major struggle, and then we'll pivot to some future focused opportunities. I don't need to share with you all, and probably not with our listeners, some of the statistics about Portland's marginal income tax rate being effectively the highest in the country, and the increase in the business tax burden, 82% just between 2019 and 2023 here in the city. And we could go on and on, but I do want to hear from both of you, and maybe we'll start with you, Andrew, but I want to hear from both of you about the effect that the tax structure, and I'm talking about the layered tax structure. This isn't just the city's fault,
right?
But the tax structure, the effect it's having on the businesses, the business climate, and what you'd like to see happen and change, and then we'll have the mayor share his thoughts as well.
Sure. Well, look, I will do two stats because they're yours.
But they are important.
They're
yours. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
if they're ours, by all means.
And if you don't know this, OBI produces the tax burden sort of report every 2 years or so, and the most recent one was published in 2024. And the two numbers that stick out, so I'm going to read it straight. Oregon state business taxes have increased by $3.4 billion, or 77%, between 2019 and 2023. Local taxes paid by Portland businesses have increased 82% since 2019. And in the city of Portland, business taxes grew collections 85.6% between 19 and 23, accounting for 51% of all taxes paid to the city. So let's evaluate that. we're looking at over 150% increase on taxes on businesses in our community in terms of the collections going to our public entities, both at the city and state level. In aggregate, that's a lot. The rapidity of the increase is enormous. And I don't think there's a business or a community member that could look around and say, hey, if you are nearly doubling the amount of resources you're paying, you should generally maybe expect a doubling in the quality of services. And we can all, I think, very honestly admit that isn't even close. Yeah. If we're going to pay the highest taxes in personal income tax and see this level of increase and layering between the city and state on business taxes, there should be an expectation that we are getting the Bentley of services. And of course, the disconnect between those two things is enormous. And then as it relates to business, and I'll actually borrow a little bit from prior Mayor Wheeler, who, we spent a lot of time together, who in his parting words made a really good observation. It's one that I think we all have to keep in mind. With the pandemic coming and going, people and businesses choose to go wherever they want. And we have to, as a community and as a city, compete on a global stage. And businesses and people have the opportunity to move anywhere they want on planet Earth now. There is no more connection other than our own good looks to place. So we have to make a compelling case for why they should be here. And so the tax how this manifests into taxes is a conversation with business that needs to get real and real quick. If we're going to pay the majority of share of all city services here in the city of Portland, let's start with not making fun of business. That's a real simple low bar, and this is not the mayor I'm talking about. Let's start by not belittling the private sector. It's a great point when your largest customer pays the majority of your bills. Let's just be nice and say thank you. There's a good starting point that we have not culturally achieved yet. So put aside the tax implications, the profound policy implications of this, the creation of the donut effect, so to speak. Let's just start with a good culture of being appreciative of our partnership between the private and public sector. To me, that's the core of the tax conversation. There has been a missing honesty, appreciation, and conversation with business that now the public sector completely in this state depends on. Full stop. More than any other place. And that is a precarious scenario that we can all be honest about.
Yeah. I can kind of segue, but give it some finer points. I think Andrew was right. If you're going to pay New York City taxes, you've got to expect New York City services. We won't talk about the Bentley because we're Buy American. So
Daimler North America. My bad. No. I'm so sorry, Daimler, if you're listening.
but kind of riffing off of what Andrew says, taxes, they play a very important part in whether or not a company is going to stay, grow, or come to Portland. So let's just be very clear about it. Taxes are very, very important because these business owners are doing ROIs, return on investments, to say, what can I do? And quality of life is very important. We had a meeting. So the governor and I convened investors from around the nation, developers, affordable housing developers, equity fund, hedge funds, the money. We wanted to know about the money. And why aren't you investing in Portland? And it was a closed-door meeting, 2.5, 3 hours. It was a great conversation, and we distilled it down to two key pillars when we were at the end of the day, what's it going to take? And they said, first and foremost, taxes. Taxes aren't competitive. And the other pillar was livability. They want clean streets and safe places. So I always go back to everybody. I can only control what I can control. I can't, with a wand, lower taxes. But if I can get the city to focus on our basics, on that foundation, clean streets and safe places. The city is marvelous. The European small streets, 2 rivers, community, mountains, oceans. We have things that you just cannot buy. And that's really a way of life. And so we are making some changes on taxes. We have a business license tax exemption increase from $50,000 to $100,000. So a business can take those earnings and put it back into their business. That'll affect about 10,000 businesses in Portland. Yeah, we do have some levers. They're not massive levers, but they're important. They're important messaging that we're going to bring forward. But I want to go back to it's clean streets and safe places. We are going to provide livability that matches up with New York City and is actually better than New York City because we must ensure that we have a city we all love, trust, and respect, and the dignity is there. But then as far as growth goes, we have our tax increment financing. We have 6 new districts we're signing, $2.8 billion we're going to be investing in the city. We can't squander that. So fix the city, fix the product. We're fixing the product right now. And then we're going to ask community members, both local, regional, nationally, come back to Portland because we're back. It's time for them to come back. And then we're going to build up our city together.
All right, so I think this is a good segue because you mentioned that you have some lovers, but not all of them. And so let's talk a little bit about the state. You know, OBI is a statewide advocacy organization. That's our wheelhouse from a policy perspective. What can the state do to help you and seize this moment of opportunity in the city of Portland?
So this is my wish list. This is great. Opportunity zones, enterprise zones, expanding the use so we can really provide that benefit right now. The Strategic Investment Fund, very important. Right now, for a large business to move into Portland, they have to have $150 million in capital. But if you want to move into a rural community, it's just over $40 million. Let's lower that down to where Portland can gain the rural benefit. Let's lower it down to 40. If we want to bring Portland back, then let's shake things up. Doing the same things over and over again isn't going to change the outcome. We need help with our affordable housing debt consolidation. We're underwater in that case. We need to work closely with the state. And I don't want to try and dismiss. The governor has been such a partner in this. Her recently declared homeless emergency brings funding to Portland, and we've been using those funds very effectively. I know there's a lot of frustration in the community, but I will tell you, every dollar and every dime that Portland has, you see the benefit on the street. Continue that focus on addressing the humanitarian crisis. So we need the state legislature to just continue to move forward on the investments in housing, homelessness, but also business development. We have to have a focus on building business because we've talked about this doom loop, right? Property taxes and business license taxes. We need housing units, which brings in new property taxes, and we need job growth and population growth because that will bring in business license tax growth, income taxes for the state. We have to stop thinking about cut exercises and start growing our city and doing it within a very aggressive approach.
That's great. Andrew?
Yeah, so just, everything looks towards the state, right? We as a community fly under whatever the state's culture and direction is. And the way I look at it is, yes, we have a high tax burden here, but the state has a high tax burden. So we have to have, going back to your previous question, I think a genuine and very difficult conversation around reform, because it's not working and it will not work. If we are on top of a nearly 10% personal income tax rate here in our community, we're already starting out behind the ball, right? So we have to get into those weeds. So that's a bigger, longer topic that I won't bore people with, but I would say that's number one. 2, having an economic strategy that is detailed, specific, ambitious, and bold, that allows for communities like Portland and every other community around the state to be able to say, we're just filling in the blanks underneath where the state wants to go. So we're not all guessing and throwing things against the wall for what's specifically tailored for Portland. But of course, we are in the state of Oregon. So we need the state of Oregon to take economic development seriously right now and develop a game plan that we can all fly in under. So that's number 2. And then number 3, this is the moment of our generation. I'm just going to say what we all need to say. The Portland Trailblazers. And I think to Bill Wilhelms' credit, he said it perfectly. This is the moment. Do we decide as a community that we are going to keep what we have and grow it? Do we or do we not? Yes, it's a sports franchise, but it could be any business or any household. It will be a symbol about whether or not we take the things that we got, that we have earned, which is the presence of a major league NBA franchise, and now 2 with the Fire, whether we've earned this and whether we can keep it and grow it. And so to me, any message to a state policymaker is that we need those 3 things. Let's use the Blazers as the example and the opportunity to lean in to keeping business here, which that should be the first, second, and third thing that you do in any conversations. Keep what you have and care for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that we probably ought to do a podcast on that alone. Because it is a big
I was a
topic
basketball player at Never.
You actually just
That
piqued
never
my. I was like, I
happened.
thought I knew Andrew
No,
pretty
no,
well,
no,
but this is going to surprise me too.
False.
So okay, you are very busy men, and I need to let you get back to your day jobs. But before I go, I have to ask, and generally, is there anything else you want our listeners to know? But really, with an eye toward, there is so much to love about the city and the region. I grew up here. I love it here, and I'm optimistic and hopeful. Agreed, it's not a strategy. I also have a to-do list. But what about you is motivating you right now? What are you most excited about as you think about your work for 2026? And we'll start with you, Mayor, and then Andrew will let you go.
I would say just let's use last year as the springboard. We accomplished something that no American city has ever accomplished. It just shows that we can do big things. And what I wanted to just provide to you and your listeners is, first of all, the red carpet is out. I'm good friends with Dan Duran, who is a commissioner in Umatilla County. He brought in a truckload of watermelons and potatoes, and we had the bounty of Umatilla County at the Portland Pioneer Courthouse Square, and we matched up those farmers with chefs, 10 chefs, and we just had these appetizers in the middle of the square. It was a party, and I just remember the Mayor Hermiston coming up to me. I had no idea Portland was this beautiful, and all the commissioners said the same thing. We had so many people just say, I didn't know. We want to let everybody know in Oregon, Portland's open. We're your living room. It's time to come back. And that's manifested with numbers. We had a 20% increase in downtown foot traffic in the Pioneer Courthouse Square over the Thanksgiving weekend. It is beautiful. It is clean. It is safe. And it is remarkable. I'm just asking everybody to come back and see for yourself. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
That's great. Andrew?
Yeah, and I'll build on that because between this recording and this week, we'll release our annual foot traffic numbers. And the good news is that the entirety of the year saw a massive increase in foot traffic in downtown. And specifically, the things that blew my mind away were, for the first time ever, we're seeing consistent outperformance of 2019, which is pre-pandemic levels, in one area specifically, weekends. Because we like to party.
That's right.
And so everybody should come down and party with us. And so I would just invite everybody similar to the Mayor, because there's such great things to do here now. We've really got our vibe back in terms of the hospitality and celebratory areas of our city. The thing that I would also say, which gives me great hope and optimism, is that this is the moment that, I don't want to say legends are made, but in some senses, for those of us who live through these really, really exceptionally difficult moments, because this is one, this is a real moment for our city and state. Did we put on our big person pants? And did we fix the foundational problems that we know we have? These aren't secrets. Setting up for future generations all the same splendor that we got to enjoy.
That's right.
And so to me, I get so excited because we do have a blank canvas. It's not just the red carpet. It's we get to do it together and really fix some of the challenges that we face. And I think that we will be successful. It's just going to be hard. It's going to be painful. But it gives me nothing but optimism to think that we get to do this work, that we get to live through this moment.
That's
so
right.
I'm grateful.
Angela, I think I'll put a finer point on this. Portland is open for business.
Amen.
I love it. I love it. And Oregon is open for business too. I will say it, even if others won't. So Portland Mayor Keith Wilson, Portland Metro Chamber President and CEO Andrew Hoan, thank you both for your time, for your leadership, for your commitment to this community. We can't do it without you in the roles that you're in. So thank you very much for joining us here today. And listeners, thank you for tuning in. The Oregon Business Matters podcast is a production of Oregon Business and Industry, the statewide Chamber of Commerce, and our episodes can be found on all the top podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And for more information about OBI, visit OregonBusinessIndustry.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.